Hi, welcome back. Let's do some previews. Sorry, I mean, it's odd to say like we're going to be doing, and we certainly went through every team, every Power 5 team in college football, along with some group of 5 teams that we thought were interesting coming into preview this season. You can find all the videos there up on YouTube for sharpcollegefootball.com. But today, we're here to talk about just a quick run through of the questions that we have about the Big Ten East as they come back into play. And tomorrow we'll turn it around and do the Big Ten West. So I'm Rob Bowron. I'm the econometrician behind Beta Rank, and I do a lot here at Sharp College Football. So we're gonna run through. I think we'll try to be pretty quick. I don't know. I mean, I say that, but we'll try to be pretty quick. Running through the teams here. And getting through sort of like I think it's important that there are questions that I think, for teams, each of these teams is going to have a projection from us that's going to have, their overall ranking, offense, defense, and then even some special teams. But special teams really at this point, projecting special teams is a total wild guess. I mean, it's almost entirely based off how you did on special teams last season. But then the other portion of it is we'll have expected win totals. But if you are a fan of one of these teams, really the questions that, you need to have, that you should be looking forward to answering, if you will, to see if the team's going to beat the expectations, beat these projections. Because every team on here, every single team, even Maryland or Rutgers, has upside. It's absolutely true. I mean, each of them has the potential, if they answer some questions, to be better than this projection. So you can look at this and say like, oh man, he's just ragging on these teams. But this is really the questions that you should want to, if you think that your team is going to beat expectations coming into this year, then we think that these are the questions that really, that they're going to have to answer. So we'll try to run through them as we get through this. So I'm excited. The Big Ten East, of course, has a headliner, if you will, as well as some opening acts. But even the opening acts are a lot of them are pretty good. So this should be a lot of fun. They've been, it's been, even as I think the Big Ten West has been pretty consistent and strong. The Big Ten East has really been a lot where the conference power has been. I mean, of course, a lot of that is Ohio State, but let's jump in. I'm excited to jump in and talk about, what this is going to be. So our first team here is the Ohio State Buckeyes. We have them projected at number 2 coming into this year. They're currently sitting right behind Clemson. Still, I mean, with their projection sitting ahead of Alabama right now. We project them at number 2 on offense, number 9 on defense. They do have, if you look at it, they return 65% of their production on the offensive side, 65% of their production on the offensive side of the ball, only 47 on defense. They did get a real big, so they've had some real big returns on both sides actually, but I think that the one to really call out, is the return on the offensive line. That gives them 3 returning starters off their really excellent offensive line that they had last year. Last season, they were a run first offense, and they were able to play action a lot and use Fields and take a lot of the burden off. I mean, Fields is the headliner. I think when you look at how people talk about Ohio State and the offense, but the real story and the stars of last season were really the running game and the offensive line. I mean, this was a run first offense. They graded out even better in Beta Rank's effective rush than even some like triple option teams like the service academies. Like they were just an incredible running team last year. So there's lots of ways to skin the cat in college football. You can be a dominant rushing offense and absolutely do well. So Ohio State, we are projecting them to have an excellent offense again at number 2. The defense is really, this is where our questions, let's jump into the questions, right? So they have a lot less coming back on this side of the ball. We project them at number 9 here. They really took a big jump back up with Hafley last season. And now he's off to Boston College. I mean, that improvement is really what powered them back up to being a national title contender, along with, Ryan Day's excellent offense. In steps Kerry Coombs. Is he ready? It's not he has been one of the best, position coaches in college football. He was off to the pros as a position coach. He doesn't have, a lot of play calling on the resume. He's going to get this opportunity. Play calling matters. Like people, too many people, run out there and just say it's all scheme or it's all, player development. The actual play calling matters. And Coombs, he's going to be new at this. So mileage may vary. I mean, this is one of the big questions that I think we should, we have here is he ready for this? And that's, if you're an Ohio State fan, you're really going to want to see, and you're going to get an opportunity in week 2 because Penn State now has a new OC coming in that we're going to talk about. You're going to get to see, and find out pretty quickly whether he's got it or not. I'm a little less fussed about the departing production. I think Ohio State has recruited well enough. I think that they have some really terrific position coaches. I think Larry Johnson in particular on the defensive line just does an outstanding job developing talent. So I'm not, if you're an Ohio State fan, I wouldn't be losing sleep over, that, but I would also look, LSU's defense, they lost a ton off of last year. They bring in somebody that has, Bo Pelini at the very least was one of the best regarded play callers in college football a long time ago. But they brought in a new play caller. You have a bunch of lost production. They're really struggling at a place that used to really, under Les Miles and, even on, with Orgeron and Aranda there, they were able to really just roll out, didn't matter what the losses were to the NFL draft. They were able to roll out an excellent, competent defense. It hasn't been the same. So just keep an eye on this. LSU's defense is a little bit of a warning. It is hard to just roll out replacements and not have hiccups. So Ohio State does lose a lot on the defensive side of the ball. They do have a new coordinator coming in. If there is uncertainty about this team, this is absolutely where it is. And then, can the special teams be as good? They were incredible last season. Really what we've seen in college football right now with, the Clemsons and the Alabamas and the way LSU was last year, you really have to be hitting on all cylinders. You can't be leaving money on the table. One of the things that I think you could argue held Bama back a little bit last season is their special teams weren't in the same range as some of the other programs. So Ohio State and special teams need to absolutely be special once again. So now hopping over Penn State. I'm really excited about the Nittany Lions. So they come in at, we have them at number 9 right now, number 11 on offense, number 12 on defense, 11 on special teams. With 6 expected wins, Ohio State had, let me go back and look, almost 8 expected. Really, like when you, with that projection at 7.59, that's really like 8 expected wins. For Penn State on a the expected win total there, on an 8-game schedule, that's still pretty good. That's, don't take anything away from that if you're Penn State. You have Ohio State on the schedule, which hurts, that one's going to be a tough game. But, I am excited for this Penn State team. They come in, they have, they're number 48 in returning production. They're returning 74% of their production on offense, 63% on defense. These are Bill Connolly's. I have a full-time job elsewhere, as a data scientist. So I use Bill Connolly's numbers. And I have not had time to do any manual updating to them. We're just going with them. So on this side of the ball, for Penn State, though, their real question mark, if you will, is Kurt Shiraka, who is just a terrific hire. And I think Ricky Rain getting that head coaching job that allowed him to move on. I think that was an opportunity for both program and coach to amicably go their separate ways. It was something that really wasn't working as well as it should have. And Shiraka did just a phenomenal job with that Minnesota offense. Schematically, they were one of the most fun offenses to watch in college football. I am really, really excited for him to be in Happy Valley. He is the kind of hire that's a little more like that Moorhead hire that brings that kind of, I think, excitement in. So, I think that the Penn State offense has significant upside over where they were last year. If you're a Nittany Lion fan, you should be really, champing at the bit to see, what Shiraka can do with this offense. But the defense, with Micah Parsons gone, he's not included in that number. That's the one. Can the defense get past, that loss, which is significant? Like losing superstar type talent hurts, and they were really expecting him to be there this season. I'm interested to see, how they adapt. Penn State certainly recruited well under Franklin. The defense has been pretty good. They haven't always been, great, but I think that, if you're Penn State, you're going to want to be in the range. I mean, you're not quite in Ohio State's recruiting range. You're not quite in, and we'll see how Kerry Combs shakes out, but you haven't necessarily had that A+, coordinator talent there, the way that the Buckeyes have had. Now you've got Sharp, and I think that is, an A+ coordinator hire. The defense, if they can be good enough both with the offense and the defense either holding steady or maybe making even a little bit of improvement off of last year, if they can get within and stay within a touchdown of the Buckeyes, then if the Buckeyes have any kind of a bad game, turn the ball over, Penn State could absolutely snag a win there. It's not so much. And if Sharp is as good as he was at Minnesota, then Penn State's offense could be really dangerous because he'll have a lot more talent than he was working with the Gophers. But that does bring up, Clifford, the QB, you now did go out and make this great coordinator hire that we're a really big fan of. Is Clifford the guy? Is he going to be able to, and I don't know that it's something that they, rotate him out. I'm not saying this is he the guy as in like he's going to get benched? I don't think that's the case, but does he impose a ceiling on where this offense goes? That's an interesting question for me. I think, as you look at this, his numbers have been pretty good. They haven't been great. I'm interested to see him with a different OC and see if that really, if he's able to, make a jump, or, and hopefully not, whether he holds back what, Sharp is building there. So on to the Michigan Wolverines, who lose just a mountain of production. Like our first question here, of course, but we have them projected at 19, the offense at 26, the defense at 14. Don Brown has built a pretty consistently very good. They haven't been great at any point, but a very good defense there at Michigan. They're pretty salty. We're only projecting them at a little over 4.5 wins, against the 8-game slate. The big thing is and this is going to be year 3 with it. What's Josh Gaddis got going, right? I mean, they've replaced a ton on the offensive side of the ball. When we look here on offense, they rank 121 in returning production. They're only returning 36% of their production on the offensive side of the ball. They're at 49% on the defense, but they're only, Michigan's at 125 overall in their ranking on overall returning production. So this is a watch out for this team for sure. I just keep an eye on that's something with as little experience as they're going to have coming back. And Gaddis, he's got to earn his keep. He was a big hire for Harbaugh, going in a different direction, opening up a little bit more from the spread, to bring in more spread elements. They haven't hit anywhere near where they need to. And Michigan, people, there is a recruiting gap between, Michigan and the Buckeyes. Michigan, if they had better coordinators, would also close more of that gap. It is, recruiting is not the end all be all, and people are just bad at math and are unable to differentiate between highly collinear vectors, is a way to put it. So I would say, what is Gaddis? Gaddis has to do better than this 26 projection. We don't have them projected super high. They don't return a lot. They were good, but they weren't great last season. So we don't expect them to be phenomenal. Can Gaddis beat this? Right. And that's his job. If you're Michigan, you're not paying Gaddis to be sitting there at 26 on offense. They really need to be a lot, within the top 15 again, for him to really, earn his keep. They can't have, years where they're dropping all the way back into like a pretty middle of the road Power 5 offense. They've got to do better than that. And I think that's a reasonable expectation for him. So then, the other thing I think is there's increasing pressure. Harbaugh hasn't received a contract extension. Some of that is COVID. Some of that is Harbaugh, and I think that as the season goes on, depending on how the season goes, that conversation I think could become a distraction for them, because I think it will. Harbaugh is such a national figure and a lightning rod figure, that I think that the drumbeat, if they are dropping games here or there, and if they only end up let's say at 5 wins with another blowout to the Buckeyes, it's going to be tough. I mean, this is a challenge for Harbaugh right now with as little production as they return. I think for them, it's going to be, this could be a really challenging year, and a year that, it leaves him potentially going into, and I get it. Nobody's got a lot of money, so it's not like he's likely to get a buyout, even at Michigan. But he might begin going into next year, the final year of his contract, with no extension on the table. And I mean, we may see a lot more of that across college football as programs deal with the financial impact of COVID and really not having money for, fixed price buyouts that were negotiated pre-COVID. It may not end up being all that unusual, frankly. So, but there are some questions I think about Michigan. If they answer those, and particularly on the offensive side of the ball, because I have a little more faith in Don Brown. I think that, if they can get to 6 wins and play Ohio State close, Harbaugh probably does get an extension out of this. So, it's not all doom and gloom, Dermot Strang. So, hey, the Indiana Hoosiers, Windiana. I'm excited. I like Indy. Who doesn't like Indiana? Like they're kind of a fun, plucky story. We have them projected at 31, 21 on the offensive side of the ball. That's really been the engine for them. Over the past couple of years, they've really been an offense first team. The defense we have projected like on the wrong side of Power 5 average at number 46. Their special teams really weren't good last year. Indiana's got to pick that up for sure. But we have them projected at 3.95 wins overall. I think if you're Indiana, you certainly, have to look at that and feel like you might have some upside there. They do lose their offensive coordinator, Kalen DeBoer. He's off to be the head coach at Fresno State. That was a good hire by Fresno State. I think he did a really good job with the Hoosiers, and I'm excited to see, if they're able to really keep it going. Nick Sheridan is their new offensive coordinator. He's an internal hire. Yes, that Nick Sheridan, the one that used to be a Michigan quarterback. He's an internal hire. Hasn't had play calling experience before. Mileage may vary. You still feel like you like, what the Hoosiers' potential is on the offensive side of the ball. But given that that really has been the engine of their success in such a big way, it really does put a lot of pressure on them there, because they're at 74% of their production coming back on the offensive side of the ball. That's a lot to hang your hat on. On the other side of the ball, on the defense, they have 82% of their production back. On defense, returning production correlates less with, on the field performance the following year than it does on the offense. The offense, it's really important to know the scheme. On the defense, it's a little more important to have some athletes. Recruiting's a little more correlated with, defensive performance. But for Indiana here, this defense has been sitting here in this range, and this, they haven't had a year where they've really broken through and maybe even got close to the 20s. This has got to be it. You're returning so much, this is the year. Otherwise, I think it's time for them to go out and potentially hire a new defensive coordinator, because this is the opportunity. Seize it. If they can't, then it's probably time to go in a different direction. So. And then if you are Indiana, I would be excited. They have they have quite a bit coming back. And a lot of these guys may be back again next year, depending on what roster management even looks like, as, we go into a year that essentially doesn't count for eligibility. I don't even know. So but what does success look like for Indiana, right? Like is 500 in the Big Ten, getting to 4 wins again, is that success? And, it might be, I think the one thing, if you're Indiana, is, you definitely want to beat everyone that we project below you. So it's really important to beat Michigan State. If you can poach a win from either, Michigan or Penn State, that puts you in potentially at what you would consider like a very, very successful year, for the Hoosiers there. So that's for me, like 5, I think a really successful year for them here is 5 wins, against the slate that they have. Maybe, when you count it, I think the Big Ten is going to play that 9th game, the same weekend as the Big Ten championship. So if they could, if they get to 6 wins there, like that's a very, very good year for the Hoosiers. But 5 wins on the 8 game, I think is a big year for them, and something that they should be really happy with, knowing that they potentially get a lot of these guys back again, the year after. So if you're Indiana and your DC doesn't have it turned around this year, and then you also get a big returning production bump coming into next year, go out and make a move. I mean, it would definitely be time. So then we got Michigan State. Oh, bud. So the Mel Tucker hire, I mean, Michigan State got handed a really late in the hiring process hot potato. And having watched late in the hiring process hot potatoes get handed around, like programs often are scrambling to make a hire, fill a staff. It is tough. So Mel Tucker, wasn't super successful at Colorado. He made the decision. And the offense was just nightmarishly bad under D'Antonio for years. And D'Antonio did not seem inclined to make the kind of changes that really needed to be made. So him moving on, you could argue, was a big opportunity for them to hit the reset button and go in a different direction. They chose not to, and that is disappointing. I think they had an opportunity to really go in a different direction. And instead Mel Tucker brought his offensive coordinator from Colorado, Jay Johnson. And I thought Johnson, and I watch a lot of I thought Johnson just did a really bad job with that Colorado offense last season. So I am not sanguine about when we project this offense at 85. I feel like that's really fair. Johnson may get him up into the 70s. I mean, that's an extremely bad Power 5 offense, but I love the hire he made on the defensive side. So Scotty Hazelton, the defense did take a little bit of a step back last season. I mean, there's no getting around it. I mean, that was that was really the calling card for those D'Antonio teams. Michigan State doesn't have a lot back. They're at 117 overall in returning production. They returned 43% on the offense, 49% on the defense. But that defense last season only graded out really like dead in the middle of the Power 5 at number 30 overall. A lot of those really good the better D'Antonio teams had defenses that were grading out in the top 10. They need to potentially get back there. Scotty Hazelton, who had been, a long time at Wyoming with Craig Bull and Laramie's one of the hardest places in college football to recruit to, built a very good defense there, had a really good year on his 1 year at Kansas State. And then moves on to Michigan State. I think it's a very smart hire. They retained a lot of the defensive staff, the player development that they had there. I think that the defense does bounce back, and I think that they beat this number, 40 projection that we have them, and that does give them some upside. The special teams really, really has to get better than they were last year. This 109 where they sit, which is mostly based on where they were last year, is just impossibly bad. That's not going to work. So yeah, also, if you go back and look through their stats from last year, the QB situation was pretty horrendous. Who really emerges and can they hold the job? Can they hold the job down? Johnson, I don't expect him to work miracles with this offense, but he can be workmanlike with them. But they're going to have a QB emerge. Even Steven Montez was up and down in his time at Colorado, and Johnson certainly didn't do a lot with him or get the most out of him that you could. And Colorado had some reasonably talented wide receivers and a decent, not a great offensive line, but a decent offensive line and some good backs. Johnson's going to need someone to step forward and really help him out and be able to execute. So, them being able to find a QB, I think, is really critical for them. This 2.5 expected wins for them, that's really tough. If you're a Michigan State fan, you're used to winning a lot more games than that. Obviously without non-conference, that doesn't help. But for them, I think, really the positive sign here, I think, if you're a Michigan State fan, if you can see Hazelton get this defense back up into the top 20, into the teens, that's a really big win heading into next year. And then I think, they dumped a buck, just a dump truck full of money, that Big Ten money, to bring Mel Tucker in. Tucker was in a spot because that Hazelton hire was terrific, but he may not have been able to go out and get an OC that he particularly wanted. If it doesn't work this year, it's time to cash it in, and move on, for them. And they should be willing to do that. And they certainly have, the Big Ten bucks to potentially be able to do that. So on to, oh boy, I mean, so nearly everything went wrong in 2019 for the Terrapins. So number 97 overall, there is where we have them right now. 97 on offense, 93 on defense, 113 on special teams, just barely, nosing above, across their schedule. I don't know where they're going to win a game, but we do expect them to win one game, basically on there. But I mean, just in Mike Locksley's first season, I mean, it was nothing short of it. It was, I realize everyone, Tuscaloosa is where coaches go to be reborn. They go to get baptized and their sins are washed away, if you will, at the Church of Saban. And this Mike Locksley was the Mike Locksley from New Mexico, which was, his prior head coaching job, which was an absolute disaster. And truly, I mean, Locksley, he absolutely has to get the offense going. He was a really well fit hire here because of his connections in recruiting, particularly the DC area. But they haven't gotten it done in recruiting. In question 3 there, I mean, it really, really has to get better for them to make this Locksley hire look like it's going to pay out. If they're not able to recruit, Maryland, Northern Virginia better than they have been, I mean, they're in a lot of hot water. I mean, I don't know that they're going to get it turned around. And Locksley, as the OC, for Alabama, he's clearly not Sarkisian. I mean, frankly, I mean, he's not quite, the play caller that, the guy that replaced him has been. So that's not to say I absolutely think he can put together a better offense. They got to get a quarterback to emerge because their quarterback between Jackson and Pigram, quarterbacking last year between Jackson and Pigram was just nightmarishly bad. It simply, I mean, for Maryland, if you go and you look at, these projections here, I mean, even getting to the point where, I mean, and really I don't think success, if you're a Maryland fan, it may not be in wins and losses. And so accept that. Look at the advanced stats, and I'm not just saying that because I run, an advanced stats, but I mean, if you see Maryland beat these projections by a wide margin, and I mean getting into the 70s, that still means they probably lose 7 games. But getting into the 70s, maybe the 60s, really beating these projections by a pretty significant amount would show that the team was developing players and they were starting to get the scheme and execute it, and that gives you real hope for next year. So. If you're Maryland, that's what you're going to have to hang your hat on. And then recruiting, I mean, for Locksley, this is what you were hired for. If you can't deliver, it's not going to get better and it's not going to work. Because I do think Locksley can develop players, but I mean, Nick Saban hires guys that can recruit and develop players for the most part. But Saban is no dummy. I mean, he hires some of the best recruiters out there that he can find, and Locksley was a star recruiter for Saban, and even recruited by UNM standards in New Mexico fairly well. He's got to turn it on. And if they can't, this actually may not get better. So this year is going to be interesting to watch. I think because of the financial situation that Maryland is going to find themselves in. I think Locksley's probably got a little bit of a longer leash than he would have otherwise. But it's going to be something to see here, because I don't know, if you don't see these recruiting rankings start to peak up, if you don't see them start to get into closing in on at least getting into the 70s and the offensive and the defensive rankings, there's just not going to be a lot to hang your hat on coming into this, this next season for them. Hey, Rutgers. I mean, we're at a half hour. I really wasn't planning on doing that. I mean, I just yakety yak. So, Rutgers, I mean, we project them at 107, but there's a new old sheriff in town. I mean, so we've got him at 111 on offense, 87 on defense. The special teams were just horrendously bad, 120. I mean, we project them at a win. I don't know where Rutgers is going to win a game, but we do project them to get lucky one night and get somebody. But they've got they've got a decent amount of returning production here. So the number 12 on returning production, they've got 76% of the offense coming back, 79% of the defense. Of course, they were terrible last year. So saying hey, you've got a bunch of players that were really bad coming back is not always the recipe for success. But I, you're certainly, if you're Rutgers, having guys that have seen the field doesn't hurt, right? They're going to have to coach them up. There's going to have to be some ingredients there that also get better. I think Schiano, on the defensive side, with the staff that he's hired, our question number 3 there, can they improve the D? We have them at 87 here in our projection. Can they beat that? Get into, for Schiano, and that those Ohio State defenses under his last years, that really stunk that his last season. And Ohio State really made an upgrade when they went to Hafley. He's got to, that's the side of the ball he hangs his hat on. They have to get better there for sure. On the offense, they bring in Gleason, who was, Sean Gleason, who was at Oklahoma State. Prior to that, he was at Princeton. He's a New Jersey guy. I don't know how else to put it. He sucked at Oklahoma State. He was bad. It's one of those ones where, I think people looked at this move and thought, wow, like he's, Oklahoma State's losing their offensive coordinator, and they often lose their offensive coordinator. And I think Mike Gundy, over his career, has done a very good job of going out and finding that next guy. Gleason seemed really interesting to be able to match up with what they had recruited with Chuba Hubbard, running a more of a run-oriented spread. And, Oklahoma State didn't fall off the map, but by their standards, their offense last season finishing in the 30s, that's just not good enough for the Cowboys there. So they made a move. You could argue it's, really good for both parties. Again, that, Gleason gets to go closer to home and, have a fresh start, and, Oklahoma State gets to try to find somebody, again, that can, make the offense hum. But, can Gleason, sort of reestablish himself as, one of the young, interesting offensive coordinators around college football? I don't know. The Oklahoma State interregnum gives me questions if it's going to work here. It certainly is a flashy hire. In a lot of ways, they're able to pick him up maybe a little bit out of the bargain bin after, that year at Oklahoma State and Stillwater. But it's, I think when you look at it, it's a better hire than you might have expected them to make. And it could pay dividends here. So keep an eye on whether they can put it together on offense. If they can get into the 80s, they're having a really good year, under Gleason in the first year there. So they're going to need some coaching up. They're going to need some schematic and play calling advantages. Schiano, if he can get the defense going, Rutgers getting into, getting into the realm of, this year finishing in the 70s, being close to just a very bad Power 5 team. I think would be a win. For them. And if they can start building towards that even for next year, when again, like this year doesn't count for eligibility. So, some teams, could be at a significant roster advantage. Everybody could be, it could be a wash next year. There may not even be a point of doing returning production next year. So we'll see. But that's it. Those are our questions for each of the Big Ten East teams. So again, thank you for watching. I'm Rob Bowron. I'm the econometrician behind BetaRank. You can find all those stats you saw and a whole lot more at sharpcollegefootball.com. They're updated every morning, every Sunday morning, roughly about 9 a.m. I handle the tweets from at BetaRankFB and at Sharp College Football. We have as we close in on the Pac-12 season, we also have a 12-pack or a Pac-12 podcast at 12-Pack Radio. You can find all the back episodes of that at sharpcollegefootball.com/12-Pack Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to be back again tomorrow with the Big Ten West, where we really like the Badgers a lot, and I'm excited to talk about them and some of the other teams in there too. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there, and I'm excited. More college football's back this weekend.